feel that, that the sound is cutting out on you for whatever reason, I'll adjust my microphone here. But you can always call into the phone number, and I'll just put that in the chat so that you can have it if you need to. Okay. So while you are, for the people that just joined us, while you're going ahead and answering those polling questions, I just want to kind of go through some of the things that we talked, or we were planning for today. And of course, we can make an adjustment based on whatever your needs are. But we have Tammy Stone and Jim Potts that are available to answer questions for you, as well as myself, Natasha Telger. And some of the things that we wanted to talk about is, first of all, we want to collect a little bit of information about, what kind of areas that you're interested for, or what you feel, at least at this point in time, that we need for providing technical assistance. And then we want to kind of get an idea of how many people that you have in your records as who you're working with, so that we can make sure that, make sure it lines up with, what we're seeing in IWDS and LMI WorkNet, so we can make sure that we have the customer data is all cleaned up, and we're good to go to press on, move forward. Also, we want to know if you have any people in paid work experience, because then we can have you, we'll cover that, not today, but we can follow up with you and talk about, the worksite placement tools. But that's just for us to know who you are and determine, how we need to follow up for working with the paid work experience and providing technical assistance on that. Okay. So for starters, what we want to do is we want to talk about cleaning up the customer data. And what I want to do is I want to show you some of the areas in LMI WorkNet where we can start looking at kind of the low-hanging fruit, where you can start cleaning up the information that's in LMI WorkNet. And some of you, I'm sure, are like perfectly fine, and there's nothing to clean up. Others, this might be a little bit new information for you, so we want to make sure that we're going through the dashboard, suitability, and the starting part of the progress page, and that will help with making sure that it's easy to see that the data is matching up in LMI WorkNet and IWDS. And then after that, then we'll have Jim, and he can explain some of his next steps that he's working with you guys on technical assistance. And again, this is your opportunity to ask questions. And Tammy and Jim, feel free to jump in and say anything or add to at any point in time. Okay, so on your screen, you should see the dashboard. And this is what we're looking at right now, is the production dashboard. So I'm going to use this as just kind of an example, but then whenever we go into a deeper information, I'll switch over to the test environment so that we don't expose any customer information in the recording. Okay, so we're looking at the Youth Apprenticeship dashboard, and this will be updated. We want to add in more areas for notifications and also build in next steps within the dashboard, so that, for each of these areas, we have these little info bubbles, but beyond that, we can add in next steps, so that if you know that action is needed, then we'll tell you what type of action is needed. So that's coming, but this is what we have for today. And so we do have 44 people that have started the pre-screening section of the application but haven't completed it. And then we have 19 people who have started or have completed the pre-screening piece, but they haven't actually submitted the application. Now, what we want to do is, whenever you see these areas, with a little alert here, is that we want to try and keep these at 0 as much as possible. So whenever you have a person that has started the pre-screening and not complete, you will be able to click on that list of customers, and you will be able to click on the name, and it'll take you to the application, and it'll just tell you that they've started this, but they haven't completed it. So we need to kind of work through these and get these cleaned up so it doesn't get out of control. And we either need to have the person complete it, or we need to find out what do we need to do with this. If the person's never going to complete it, then we kind of need to, then we can talk about that as a team and how do we want to handle those that have started it but they'll never complete it. Or maybe there's some, I don't know, but we really do ask for you to work with these customers because we're making the assumption that you would know these customers, and to find out why they haven't submitted the application. And if you have no idea who the person is, or they have no connection to you whatsoever, then let us know and we'll work with you to try to get those numbers cleaned up. So then we have our application submitted. So once the application is submitted, then the next step is to complete the suitability review. So we can see that there's 135 people out there that need to have the suitability review completed. And this is really important because this goes back to that entire suitability piece. The reason why we did the suitability piece is so that we look at it and confirm that this information has been reviewed and that they really are recommended for enrollment. So we change this text to match up directly with the suitability page, and we'll look at that in a second, to show that these people have been recommended for enrollment. Or if of these 135, some of the people slip through and they're just not suitable, then that's fine. They need to be marked as not suitable. Or if they thought, you know what, I just really don't want to participate, then we can move them as declined to participate. So, like I said, this number, we always want it to try to be 0. That's the goal. And we want them in, preferably in the green, but if they're in the red, then that's fine, especially if they're not suitable. So then these people that are recommended for enrollment will move down to the next section. And so we added this big note right here just to make sure that everyone is clear that only customers who have been recommended for enrollment, that means this line item, will appear in the following sections. Now, why is that important? Well, we know that there are 91, I believe, registrants in IWDS. And there's also 91 registrants in Illinois WorkNet. The difference is that this looks like you're not getting credit and you're not doing anything with those customers when you may be. So, but what this is telling us is that these people have completed this previous step. And in order for us to make sure that all of the steps have been followed, the only way that those people are going to move down here is if you have completed the recommended for enrollment. Because in some cases, we might have, people that are inquirents or that never, ever move down to this other section because they either decline to participate and not suitable. And we don't want to mix those numbers in with the people that we really are working with. So again, very important. Mark them, whatever's appropriate, as either recommended for enrollment, not suitable, decline to participate, because these are the numbers that we're going to show that, hey, we have started working with them, and all these numbers down right here have been reviewed, and they're good to go for services, progress updates, and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the youth apprenticeship on the test environment. So we're going to pick a person that is ready for review. And then let's go ahead and take a person and pre-pick a person. So let's take a look at this one. And you can see that you have their application. It's going to default to their application. We're going to take a look at suitability. I know Jim has done a lot of work with everyone on the WIOA eligibility requirements. And so we've updated the application so that it asks them in regular people language, what some of the barriers are. And so based on the information that comes in from that application, it's going to go ahead and have these items already checked. So whenever you have the conversation with the youth, you can say, oh, someone in your immediate family receives SNAP benefits. Well, what kind of documentation is required? Well, documentation showing that they received food stamps within the past 6 months. And so it tells you the type of documentation that is needed and needs to be you need to have it on file. And it also gives you all of the related policy information, so you have it right there at your fingertips. And then it also tells you, if there's an additional barrier that's required before you can be eligible. So this is kind of your little eligibility, quick reference. I was going to call it cheat sheet, but quick reference. Oops. And so you can go through and use that information. And so the idea is that you have all these documents ready to go and available so that whenever the person goes to the WIA, that they have, number one, they're eligible, and number two, we have everything in place so that they just simply have to enter the information, complete the information that's required for IWDS, and certify the application. It'll just make everybody's life a little bit easier. Okay. Then we have, you can look at their employment goals, because of course this type of information should be used whenever they're determining if this is like a place for their program, a program that they should go into. So again, we have more information that's coming from the application that you can review. You can talk this over with them. You can look at the different training program information, what's in there, and have a discussion about that. But then what it boils down to is you can select one or more of these type of training programs. So if they had construction tier 1 and construction tier 2, you could have that. If if this is like, oh, well, they're just going to go in, they're really wanting to go into healthcare, make sure you check that. And what you'll see is, this says nothing here. If I check that if I check one, then I can say that they're recommended for enrollment. It automatically defaults to it. Or, if they're, for whatever reason, it's just not going to be a good match, you can do not suitable, or you can choose at that point in time to decline to participate. So these are the different areas that we need to have one of these three. If it comes up that we need another option up there, please let us know, and we can discuss adding another option, based on your experience. But whenever you select the training program, it's going to go ahead and do recommend for enrollment, and then you can click save. Okay. Then we have some instructions that are up here as well to help you with that. So then the next thing is, okay, so we have a person, they've met the eligibility requirements, they're suitable. Now I need to use Only WorkNet as that communication tool. I need to make sure that I can, if I need to, schedule an appointment for that person so that they can meet up with the career planner to finish to have all the information and certify it in IWDS. And then I'm also going to need to identify the LWIA. So what you should see is these are, again, test accounts. So let's pretend it says like Natasha Telger, and then it'll say LWIA behind it. So you need to make sure that your LWIA person is selected. And if you want to see the different contacts that are available, and you can see those on the view contacts. So you can add, remove, you can add those. But it really is important that if you are going to be working with an LWIA career planner, you need to have one or more of those people identified, because we need to know who to send notifications to. And that's how we kind of create a team or for each of these individuals, so the right information goes to the right career planner, and people aren't just overwhelmed with customer information that they're not working with. So I see that we have a comment or question coming in, so we'll go ahead and let you do that. We'll answer that as soon as I see it. But I also want to open it up. If anybody else has any questions, please type them in. I just wanted to really cover these main points to start out with to make sure we can clean up that particular area. And then I know, Jim, did you want to talk about some of what you're experiencing and some of the next steps of working with some of these customers?
Sure. Some of you have received some emails from me this morning. What we do each Tuesday, we have our programmers give us some reports out of IWDS, and we get reports out of WorkNet, and we're trying to match up because right now we have a lot of customers at different places out there. So I'd sent some tailored emails that broke out the customers to some of the agencies about customers that were at the inquirant level in IWDS and they hadn't had action taken on them. And I'm getting a lot of feedback about clients are no longer interested in pursuing the program. So we need to find a way, and Natasha just showed where we could document those customers. So it's really important, I think, if you haven't updated those on the clients that are no longer interested in participating, to make sure that those records get updated, and that would help us clean up some of our information. Because right now we just have, it's almost 100 clients that are at the inquirant level, meaning they have an application in IWDS but nothing's going on with it. So we want to get that down to really what's going on with these clients. So that's what I've been working on this morning.
And Jim and Natasha, we have been talking about that. With those particular customers, if you have somebody that's in the inquirant or applicant status and you know you're not going to be serving them, then you will need to update them in the WorkNet system also on their suitability. So Natasha, you want to walk through that again with them of where they need to make that change?
Yep. I would, on the suitability page, if they choose that they don't want to participate, you can just change this to decline to participate.
And I would strongly recommend to case note it also and provide some information potentially why they chose not to decline, or if they're not suitable, what that particular reason is of why they're not suitable. So mark them in the suitability area and then also add a case note for that.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on what Tammy said. I really recommend that case note. And the reason why is because we've had cases or situations in the past for programs where it was said the person wasn't interested, and then later on the person brought up inquiry saying that they had got told they couldn't participate or something, and there was no case notes to correspond what's going on. So as a two-way street to make sure you're protecting yourself, I would definitely highly encourage you to make sure that you are documenting those reasons why and things like that, just so somebody doesn't come back and say, hey, they just stopped responding to me. I didn't get any feedback from my career planner, so I didn't know what was going on. So it's always a good practice to make sure you're utilizing the case notes.
Yep, and also, just so you know, one of the updates that we're working on, well, I just need to get final approval for it, but would be, if they're not suitable, if they decline to participate, we will be adding a text box there that says explain why the customer is not suitable or declines to participate. So that will be something that will be incorporated into the tools. Not there yet, but it will be.
And then, Just for my own purpose, Natasha, I want to make sure I have this right. Now, if somebody puts a case note in WorkNet, it gets carried over to IWDS, and if somebody puts a case note in IWDS, it gets carried over to WorkNet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, that's all I wanted to make sure.
Yep. So and I just want to, so that's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned it. So let's say that I put a case note in Illinois WorkNet. I put the case note here, and let me just type in, test, and we'll just do save as a case note. And so, while we've added these case notes, so you can have it, for the particular area that you're working on. So if I want to have a case note particularly, along with all the suitability information, I'm already here, so you can add a case note right here. But also, I must not say something earlier. But also, a summary of all your case notes is on this case note tab. So if you create a case note in Illinois WorkNet, it's going to create a case note in IWDS. If you create a case note in IWDS, it's going to go on this tab right here that says case notes, because it's not going to know which other tabs it should go to. It's just going to go to this overall summary of case notes. You can see a summary of all the case notes, but the idea is you can put it where you are at that moment. Okay, and so we did have a question about if you are the LWIA, should you put yourself as a contact? And the answer is yes, you should put yourself as a contact, but it doesn't necessarily have to be because you're going to send yourself a request to enter something into IWDS. You don't need to do that. But we do want to have a contact for each person. So, at least one contact for each person. And then I thought I saw another one. Contact will be the LWIA. Okay, that's fine. Oh, okay. So since we are working, so there's a question. So since we are working with CareerLink, do I give their name as the contact for the appointment information area? Whenever you make an appointment, I'm not 100% clear on that. What you're going to do, if I can make an appointment for this one, I'm going to schedule an appointment. If you are working with CareerLink, then CareerLink will need to go in to WorkNet, and they have a place where they can do that, and they can list out the days and times for their openings that you can make an appointment to do the application, or so they can certify the application. So CareerLink would go in and enter the information, and then all you would do is you would select from that available appointment time, and then they will know who the person is because they'll receive a message. So as far as you don't have to set up appointment times unless you're the person that's going there, to CareerLink and doing it all at one time. I mean, if that's the case, then, you could do that however you wanted to do it. I mean, if you needed to do it outside the system because you're saying, okay, we're going to meet every Tuesday and I'm going to bring everything over there, and meet it like that, then that would be fine. But otherwise, if you're making appointments for individuals, you just go to the contact and appointment information and click on schedule appointment. Okay. I'm just reading these real quick. Okay, so, yeah, okay. For example, they've brought
I think Jacob had a question also relating to if they're enrolled. If your customer is enrolled in the program, then under the suitability, you have to have that marked as recommend for enrollment.
Yeah, yeah. And that's just the cue to let us know that you've had the discussion and you've picked the training program that they're going to. And, you know, it's just to show that this process has been completed. Okay. And, okay. Okay, so Stephanie, if you just let me, I sent those things to you a while back. Yeah, send them to me. Send them to Natasha. And if you go to your person, those people that you notice it on, and if I wanted this partner, then you can just hit remove, and they don't have access. I mean, they're not going to list as the contact anymore. I thought I was going to get an email notification when someone syncs info with WorkNet and night. You're not going to get an email notification when someone syncs information online WorkNet with IWDS. And when they submit a request, so if they go down here and they add service, and they say it's this, and it's yes, and the service is this, and the status is started and opened, and they put the date and the number of hours and submit a request, those type of notifications you would receive. And what that's going to do is send you an email that says that these people need to have information added. So I would have to know who you're working with, so I could look at their people to see if they've submitted any requests. Not really.
And
Okay.
Jacob, I can respond to your question related to what you say. You have a student that's interested, and they sounds like they're suitable, but they never bring in documentation after asking for a few weeks. I think as long as you do your due diligence and you have a specific time frame of allowing them to complete their documentation, if they don't bring in the documentation, then obviously you can't forward them on for review by the LWIA. And enroll them in the program. So in that particular case, you could just mark them as not suitable. We've, and document, we've, made so many efforts to contact that particular customer to obtain their documentation, and they have not provided the information to us. And you could even say, so at this time we're marking them as not suitable, but say they come in, the next week or two, you can always change their status from that and put them back through. But, there has to be some time, constraints on this, too, as far as them getting documentation to you.
Okay. So. Hey. Are there any other, I'm going to go ahead and move my screen share out of the way so that you can go ahead and finish, if you haven't had an opportunity yet to go ahead and enter, complete the polling questions, go ahead and do that.
Well, while Natasha's switching over, this is Jim. I will just add a few things, and this is just more about, and you guys know it also, the psychology of the time of the year. Right now, you've got a lot of people that are distracted with many things going on, and what you'll probably find is after the new year, some of these folks who maybe aren't being as responsive to be bringing things in and doing the things they need to, they might re-engage after the new year. So I would think about some of those before you totally start to say somebody's completely not interested. And you know the difference. The ones that are like, hey, leave me alone, I don't want to do this, compared to those that might just aren't being as responsive as they should be at this time. So.
Yeah, and just to add, this is Tammy, and I'm kind of temporary program manager until I get a position, filled that Matt originally held. But one of the things that Jim and I and Natasha have been really working on is that whole front end and making sure that the data is in the systems and it's clean and it's accurate, and that eligibility has been done correctly. And we do have our monitors, rapid response monitors, that have been doing site visits with you guys too. And so I think that's hopefully being really helpful with you also. So our first round of data cleanup Jim's working on right now, which is looking at those applicants and inquirents and seeing of those who needs to be moved to a registrant status. They don't all have to be a registrant. If there's somebody in there that is never going to go into the program, you can go into the suitability area and mark them as not suitable. And if we need to add some other codes to that, we definitely can. If it makes sense to, add some other language to those, we can definitely do that. So if you have recommendations, let us know. So that's our first measure to try and pay people that are in the, kind of holding pattern and IWDS to a registrant. The next move is we do have some customers that are in the WorkNet system that are not in IWDS at all. So we're going to be looking at that whole list of individuals and seeing are these people really participating, and if they are, what needs to be done? Do we need to have an application completed, or what is their status? So how are we going to move these individuals? And if they're not going to be moved, then we also need to exit them, appropriately. And then
they need to have, most of those that are in Illinois WorkNet, if not all of them, that are in Illinois WorkNet and not in IWDS, are the ones that we don't have the right Social Security number, or we don't have any Social Security number in there, because we had cleared it out because it was not the right Social Security number. So please, 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 I beg you, please, just go in and update that.
Yeah, and Natasha, I think you worked with them on the names and stuff.
Yeah.
And there are some of those that we're looking at, too, that their application isn't complete. So some of that grouping that's in there, their application is not complete. So you really need to look at those yellow bars in that and see, why the application is not complete or what's going on with that. And then, once again, you can communicate with Natasha or I on what to do with that. If we need to, eliminate them maybe from the system, or what we need to do with those, we'll figure that out. And then the third group would be individuals that you may be serving that aren't in any of the systems. I'm hoping that there's not many of those, but we have heard a little bit from TA that there may be some files out there where you're serving customers and they haven't been entered anywhere. So that's the next step, too, is you need to really make sure that this information is entered into the WorkNet system first and then synced with IWDS. So those are the three steps right now that we're taking right now. The first one is what Jim's doing, and then after that, we're going to be looking at the other two. Any questions on that? Jim, you want to add anything to that?
No, and I think the group that you're working with that aren't in WorkNet or IWS, don't wait for me to get to you. That's stuff you should be addressing now. Those should start up without anybody having to prod you along, because they need to be in the systems. If we're serving folks, they've got to be documented in these systems, or else we've got really bad data.
And the last thing you want to do is be serving somebody that's not eligible.
Yep. And if you need any assistance, feel free to give me a call. I'll put my number on there. If you don't have it, my email, and I'll put both those on there. But it's definitely stuff that we got to make sure, if you're serving somebody right now, that we get them correct both in WorkNet and IWDS. Because when a monitor comes out, that's not a pretty sight if that occurs. So.
All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, that's all we have today. So thank you very much, everyone. And like I said, reach out to us if you need any help with anything. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day.